Hi everyone. I'm here today with Andy Heald. He is a franchise owner with Premier Education and a leadership consultant as well. So we'll get into all that in a second. But thanks, Andy, very much for coming on.
No, you're welcome. Thanks for inviting me along. I'm looking
No,
forward to
no,
the discussion.
no, it'll be good. So, I mean, I've had a look at your I've had a look at your extensive LinkedIn profile. Very, very detailed. I got a lot of information from there. But what I was going to ask you first off is, like, it seems you do a lot, but how do you define yourself and the roles you play?
Yeah, so you're right. I am busy. I wear a lot of hats, and I think um, kind of define myself in terms of how, through my experience of being a franchisee, certainly, and then working directly with a franchisor as a consultant over a number of years. Throughout that journey, I was playing both roles. So I was running the day-to-day business of the franchise, but then also looking at the other side of it, which was recruiting franchisees. It was enhancing the quality with the consistency, which we'll discuss as we go through. But the skills I learned throughout that period, I kind of got to a level where the franchise business was running itself to an extent where I had a set of skills that I developed and honed throughout my time working within both capacities to step out on my own. So now my sector is predominantly the sport and physical activity sector, or wellness sector, health, and combining the business side and understanding of running small to medium businesses predominantly, combining that element with the sport and fitness side to support businesses within that sector. And I'm currently working kind of both publicly and privately. So being able to consult with the likes of CIMSPA, which is the Chartered Institute for the Management of Sport and Physical Activity, and supporting small businesses to align to some of that stuff. So it's I'm very grateful, and I'm certainly blessed to be really enjoying the work that I'm doing, because it influences other people. And I suppose in a nutshell, it's developing leaders is what I like to do, to be the best they can be.
Okay, great. Thanks, Andy. And so let's go back a little bit. So, in terms of franchising, we're talking about Premier Education as the franchise company. You have been involved as a franchisee or franchise owner with them for just over 16 years, I believe.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Like, so how did you become a franchisee with them? How did you find them, or they find you in the first place? And how did that all transpire?
Yeah, it's a good question. I was a failed footballer, so wasn't quite good enough to be a professional, but played semi-professionally. So when you come out of football, you've got to go and get a job. And sport was my passion. So I qualified as a coach and went into the leisure industry, became a duty manager of sorts. And then he said the best leaders teach. So I qualified as a teacher, and my passion still lay in this coaching side of predominantly working with children at that time. And a good friend of mine went on holiday to Greece. It's not your typical way of recruitment, but he went on holiday and bumped into a guy out there by the pool, and he was talking to him about Premier Education, and he came back from the holiday and kind of wanted to do it with somebody, with us being really good friends, and he understood my background in coaching, sport, working with children. Said it was would I be interested? So at that time, I just got married, and I just bought my first house, had a good salary coming in, and but no, we made the jump. And at that point, Premier were very much based in kind of East Anglia side of the country, so kind of Norfolk through into Cambridge, and was kind of growing out of that area through reputation. And we was able then to meet with the chief exec of the company at the time, as when Danny got back from his holidays, and we went and met them and had a discussion. Right, well, ultimately, first thing, how much are we going to earn? What are we going to make? Are we going to be able to pay the mortgage, look after the family, look after the kids? And we put some kind of rough figures together of how we made it work. And looked into the training of how that might support us, but we had this passion for working in it, and we see it seemed simple enough for us. It was presented to us in a method and in a way that we felt we could achieve, and we signed up to become franchisees. We set up initially with just the 2 franchises, and we worked on territory bases, which was where I'm from, as you might tell from my accent, from north of England, a little town called Lee. So we was predominantly in Wigan and Bolton. For the wider audience, it's kind of slap bang in the middle of Liverpool and Manchester. So I'm a Man United fan, so I'm that side of it. But that's where our territories were, which was predominantly working in schools, and we had some simple targets to it, which was selling 10 full days of work into primary schools that we operated in, and 20 extracurricular based activities. So we went through a series of training. It was a full week of training, delivering a range of things from sales to marketing to principles of running a business, how to recruit your employees, HR, all of the typical things you need to run a business. But to be honest, it was like a little intense at that time. And then we, of course, did some of the sports side, the coaching type qualifications to make it work, and the products that we had. And then we had support from the franchisor, a guy called John Mills at the time. He came and supported us with our sales activities and how to speak with schools. And within our first half term, so 8 to 12 weeks really of a term, we'd hit our 12-month target. So it was like, well, no, we were working at the back of a room in my house, and we then had to start recruiting people. And we set our vision, which was aligned with a franchise, with the franchisors really, to give children the same opportunities that we had when we were growing up. And we led with this kind of vision-led approach, and it was really successful. And we grew really, really quickly. And with that, then became the growth where, as the franchisor, kind of identified that within both me and my business partner, to see how we could then further support the growth of the franchise network, which again proved to be a great move, because the north of England at the time, we was the only franchises in the north of England, and that grew to 15, 20 franchises, certainly over the period of time we've been involved. So it was it was a fantastic experience, and lot all to that experience in terms of where I am now.
So Andy, you were very involved in effectively the franchise recruitment process based up in the north. So you were talking to people who had been in your shoes, thinking about a business, and this was a potential option, and you were talking to them as an existing franchisee and making sure that it would work out, and helping the franchise all grow the network up there, right? Yeah, definitely, and it was giving them that real understanding of, being a franchisee isn't a big hairy monster. It's not going to scare you to death. It's not, because I think sometimes there's that risk on, I'm going out on business on my own. How did I make that decision back then? I think it was a lot of it was based on gut. I know that's not possibly the best solution in the world, but we just kind of understood that what the franchisor was trying to achieve and what we wanted, we'd be better together. And we'd never run a business before. We didn't have a clue what we were doing. So we had a clue what we was doing. We had some ideas of, we were hardworking lads that were good communicators, and were quite passionate about what we was getting involved in. So we kind of knew that we could make this work. And we had that grit and determination to go and do that. We stuck to the franchise model that we've been proposed with, and it started to work. But with the franchise being in a kind of different part of the country, albeit it was Norwich, East Anglia, very what's the word I'm after? Kind of the demographics was totally different to what we was working in there. We're working in very rural schools, because our product was mainly selling to schools. Well, they was operating in rural schools. We was operating, you could have 5 to 6 schools within a 2-mile radius. Yeah. With schools with playground on the roofs, you don't have school fields. So it was different. So
because we had to tweak and communicate with a franchisor on where we would make our approaches from a sales perspective, from a product delivery perspective, the franchisor really valued that, and that's when we started to collaborate even further to grow that network. So me and my business partner Danny would talk to them. That we had quite a nice balance in terms of our roles. He would look after the operation type functions. I would look after the kind of sales, commercial, and people type functions. And the franchisor said, well, could you help us now grow that side of the network? And I think as we grow, we would, it'd help our businesses as well, because it raises the reputation and the brand in the area. And that's how it went. So Danny spoke operationally. I developed training programs, and as part of the initial induction of a franchisee or potential franchisee, you would obviously go through the process, but they would always then spend a day with myself, where I would talk to them about the products and the actual journey I'd been on. And it was about changing children's lives ultimately, and using physical activity as a vehicle. So yeah, it was a really happy marriage between us and the franchisor, that we worked collaboratively to grow the network.
Brilliant. So you weren't only helping make the choice from a franchisor perspective and a new franchisee coming in, that recruitment phase, but you were then onboarding and supporting them as they launched and grew their business, because you'd been there and done that. So all right, well, Andy, if you ever want a job as a franchise consultant, you can come knock on my door anytime if you find yourself at a loose end, because honestly, that kind of experience is is invaluable. It's a kind of thing that our consultants kind of have been through. So it's really, really, really important. But it's great. I didn't realize you had that much involvement. But how much? Where are you now with Premier Education? You've obviously still got the business, but it sounds like you're not obviously so hands-on anymore, but the business is still going. But where are you with Premier Education, and how do you continue to collaborate with them?
Yeah, so I took a step back from my role within the group, and I still own the businesses with my business partner. And I think as the franchise network grew and we grew the business locally, or businesses locally, we actually invested in further territories. So we actually went down to the southwest of England. So the same model we'd invested there with a guy called Alistair Hudson who runs the businesses now. So my input on a local level or the business level is very much on a strategic level. And to be honest, it's now looking at my exit out of the franchise, and I've invested all that hard work. It's created many jobs and has changed thousands of children's lives. It's something I'm really proud of. But now it's time for me to utilize my skills to support like-minded businesses. So I don't work directly with the Premier team anymore. I just look at my business directly. I'll offer guidance and advice where I feel appropriate. But it's great to see the legacy that I kind of created within the group. But I'm supporting wider organisations in the network. Do they become franchisees in the future? Do they license in the future? Some of the organisations I'm now working with are licensees and doing amazing work and amazing jobs, which is all aligned again to something I'm really passionate about. And I'm working with working with HR organisations that are working within a franchise. So I'm really enjoying it, because it's going into collaborations and meetings, and we're discussing real like-minded problems that I've experienced, that are potentially not solved but experienced. But we can have a really good discussion about what are potential solutions? What are the mistakes that I made? Are you making the same ones? We tried this and this worked. So yeah, that's where I'm currently at with the group.
Okay, great. Well, that leads me to ask, really. So you've been a franchisee, a franchise owner. I'd call you a franchise professional as well, with all the experience that you've had, and obviously you are focusing on the activity sector, which makes absolute sense. What would you say has kind of been the biggest hurdles that you've faced and kind of overcome, either personally or with the Premier Education Group, in your time, which of course helps you be a better consultant today. But yeah, anything you would identify as the biggest hurdles, the biggest problems?
Yeah, the biggest hurdles, and I think the biggest hurdle, if I take it from a business owner, franchisee perspective, first and foremost, is identifying all the different remits of running a business, but really understanding that when I first started, like I mentioned earlier in the pod, it was you was jack of all trades. You had to learn quickly and do everything. But then as you kind of grow and develop, you identify, well, I don't need to do everything. I need to find the right people to do that for me. And that's the biggest hurdle right at the start, in that you are spinning a lot of plates, because you're doing everything, but you've got to, it's a cliche comment really, of identifying through good strategic planning, good business planning, good training, that you can't keep working in the business. You need to work on the business, and that's the only way you'll grow. So some of the biggest hurdles at the start was, well, I was the coach, so I would be going into schools and delivering the products. And my typical day at the start would be 3-4 days actually coaching children, and that would start at 9 o'clock and finish at 3:30 in the afternoon. I would then try to get my sales meetings in between 3:30 and 5 o'clock. But then I'd have 2 days where I might have to then look at recruiting people. But then as you grow, you start to then get, well, I'm going to share this responsibility, and we don't just give it to them, but it's that training comes in. You got to delegate them, and the franchise all support that. And I think they're the lessons that the franchise all learned from us, and that they were the same hurdles that everybody was facing. And working with small businesses now, it's the same hurdles that we try to get through. Then I think from a franchisor perspective, is we grew relatively quickly. We went from 15 franchises to 100 franchises, and my role predominantly became as a quality and education director. And some people titled it the McDonald's Burger Man, because I was the one that was trying to get consistency right across the board. So making sure that people stick to the model, and as business owners become a bit more confident, I'll do it this way. Just stick with the model, because this works. And that's going to, but if you've got great ideas, bring them. The purpose of the franchise network that we share, and we all openly collaborate, and we all grow. So there were some of the biggest hurdles, is obviously getting over that barrier of identifying strategy. And I think that's then where the franchise then has that, and you're not on your own, and you're not doing it all on your own at the same time. You're actually being able to, you're still going to have to do the work, God damn it, you still got to do it in, but you've got a network to go to. But they were the biggest hurdles at the start.
Yeah, Andy, it's really interesting. So because you became a franchise owner with Premier Education as a partnership with Danny, right? So like that. So how much of an advantage was that? Because I think, and the reason I'm asking this question is because there's so many people that are looking for a franchise opportunity, and they're not thinking of doing it with someone else. That they don't even consider that. I mean, there's some ones where, as a couple, it can work really, really well. But I'm talking about where you might bring a good friend in and look to actually do it together and grow faster, to share the load, and that's obviously what you found, right? I mean, so what would you say, because that's your experience. You didn't have the other experience. You never joined as a franchisee totally on your own, having to do all of those things. So I mean, did you see that was a massive reason why you really developed into a franchise owner that did so well, and actually the franchisor came to rely on you and count on you for your support and feedback and everything else for growth? Would you put it down to that? Is it as simple as that?
Yeah, definitely. I owe a lot to Danny. It was ultimately his idea. you know, exactly what you said. He identified a strength and an asset in myself to come and ask me to get involved. I think, you know, that really helped drive the business growth really quickly, because I had the product knowledge, I had the that technical and that skill aspect, as Danny had the he's very kind of thorough in terms of his organisation skills and operationally sound. So, and it was then kind of Danny then stepped into the franchisor position before I did, and was kind of then going out to other franchisees and going, they almost need a me in there. So it was like, right, well, he then said, well, let's get Andy now involved. So I owe a lot to Danny for that aspect, but it certainly, I think it's interesting as within certainly the Premier Network now, how a number of the independent franchises that set up on their own initially have now partnered up with neighbouring franchises, so they've actually put them together and run the business together, because you've got that shared skill set and that shared ownership, but there's also what I suppose it's the shared hurt. There's a risk element to it, that I'm not on my own in this, and I'm doing it with somebody. And if you can find somebody that you trust and you know and you believe in each other, then you've got a magic formula there. And we were very lucky, very grateful, and blessed to have that opportunity to do that together. But it certainly helped because of the combined skill set and being able to grow relatively quickly.
Yeah, no,
there was pressures as well. There was pressures on, of course, there was more money needed to go out because there was 2 wages needed to be paid immediately.
Yeah.
So there was that drive to say, well, if we're going to make this work, we not springing in that. So you was almost stretched again to step outside your comfort zone, to make it work.
Yeah, I just don't see it. I don't. I've been involved in franchising and talking to people looking to invest in franchising for so long. It's very rare you actually get that kind of a collaboration. And I do think that more and more people looking at franchising should be thinking, let's do this as a partnership. Let's find, 2 people can come in and with different skill sets. And yeah, you're right that the business needs to pay salaries and things for 2 people now, but you can grow that much quicker. That if you do the right things, it can support that. And I think that's a really good point. And so you spend a lot of time with, and this is kind of a general thing, I know it's within Premier Education, but what would you say are the key characteristics, if you like, that make some franchisees very successful and others not so successful? Like in all of your experience, some general characteristics. I mean, that would apply to any business really, or franchise model, because you spent so much time in that area.
Yeah, you've got to. You have that everybody's got to have that entrepreneurial itch. You've got to want to work for yourself. You've got to want to do this on your own. If you want somebody telling you what to do and planning your time for you and doing all that, then it's not for you. You've got to want to do it. And what I'd always say is that there's got to be some, again, it's a bit cliche this, but there's got to be some why. How does it align with what you really want to do? And there's many, many businesses and organizations and franchises out there that, more probably aligned to everybody. Everybody could potentially find out why and find a business that supports that. So that would be the first one. And then you've got to be open-minded, and you've got to have that creative edge. I think the franchisees that I dealt with over my time who have struggled were the ones that went in with the entrepreneurial itch, but wanted it to do it their way. And I find myself sometimes saying, well, why on earth have you invested in a franchise? If you want to go and do it all yourself, then go and do it all yourself. Because they became headaches. So it's that, well, I'm buying into a team. I'm going into it as a team approach. It's a business on yourself, but not by yourself. It's that that approach to. So they'd be the key concepts. Find your why. Do something that you're passionate about. Be very open-minded, and be an effective communicator. I often use the kind of transactional analysis model of maintaining adult-to-adult conversations. As if sometimes people see it as the franchisor is the parent and the franchisee is the child, and that I'm telling you what to do, and well, I'm not doing it, so to speak. It's got to be that level of, well, why is the franchisor asking me to do that? And finding out what it is. And sometimes you might not always agree, and I've experienced that. But there's some justification somewhere, and it's finding out, well, why am I doing it? What works for me? So there's some common skills and trends in there, but yeah, that'd be the type of person I'd be looking for.
Yeah, no, I think, yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Entrepreneurial, but not too entrepreneurial. I think that's the key, because if you're too entrepreneurial, a franchise really isn't going to suit you, because you're just going to be, you're going to be pushing at the boundaries all the time, thinking you know better, or thinking that there's a better way of doing it. And you may sometimes be right, but it can be frustrating, I think, if you're too much of an entrepreneur and you've invested in a franchise, because you get constrained, and that's, when you say, and headaches, yes, headaches are caused there, and the best thing is to find a good amicable exit strategy, and say, goodbye to each other.
It's like he's having that openness to learning. As I mentioned, I think already, we went in with little to literally no business running. We've never had a business before. We had some understanding, but we had to learn, and you've got to be open to the fact that you don't know everything. I don't think you ever know. Like completing an MBA at 43, I'm still learning, and I don't think we ever stop. And I think you've got to be that type of person, or like we've said, is you just go and do it yourself.
Yeah. So Andy, you kind of. Well, tell me a bit about Sportivity Consultants, right? Because that's where you are now, and this is your independent business. This is your entrepreneurial side coming out, and you're taking all of this learnings from a franchise structure, and now you're applying it in your own business. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. So it was COVID, and I think with a lot of people, changed us. It got us to think differently, and I went through my own mental health struggles during that period, as others did, and I had a young family, and there was lots of noise going on, and it was time to start to run with my own vision, and not that of what Premier Education Group, and I've mentioned I owe a lot to everything in that, and it was to really broaden my horizons, and within that I was able to meet a fantastic organisation called Aspire Active Education Group, who were very similar to Premier, but were doing things slightly differently. And there was a need from the directors to say, well, we're not franchising, we're not going down that front, but we have got some licensed products that we want to grow. We've got some big ideas around some innovation and creativity. We've just done an amazing project on swimming, which is getting children swimming in the country, which I've just led on. But then through my networks that I created, I was able to, as I mentioned earlier on, get a relationship with SIMSPA, which is the Chartered Institute for the Management of Sport and Physical Activity, to really look at the public area and deal with government and raise standards. I mentioned about the McDonald's Burger Man earlier, but I can really now do that, not just within this network of franchisees. I can now do that outside that, and really stretch my horizons and push that. So yeah, Sportivity Consultancies. Yeah, I've got only a small group of clients, but my goal within that is to develop leaders within the organisations, to give them my experience and to give them my learning and share my ideas. And as I mentioned, qualified as recently qualified with UCLan, the University of Central Lancashire, with my MBA, and it's time to flex my muscles a little bit and get out there and support more businesses. And and I love meeting young, driven entrepreneurs that if one bit of advice can help them along their journey, then so be it. And I don't overthink it. The business is very much a lifestyle business at the minute, but it's something that I thoroughly enjoy and love working with small, medium businesses and business owners.
No, great. So it sounds good, Andy. Where for anyone listening who's interested in kind of getting hold of you to talk about that more, what's the best thing? What's the best thing for them to do to get hold of you or look at more
Yeah,
information about that?
yeah. As we've done, just reach out on LinkedIn. That's my best. It's my where I put all my thoughts, frustrations, and everything out on there at the minute. But yeah, LinkedIn's the best way to contact me, and all my
Okay.
details are on there.
Okay. Brilliant. All right. And last question really is, what advice would you give an independent business owner, any business, doesn't matter, and they're obviously successful and they've been going for a number of years, and they're thinking about growing their business, and they really have identified franchising as a way to do that. What one tip, if you've got two, that's fine, but what one tip would you give that person who's just at the very beginning, kind of starting to they've committed, but now they've got to take the steps? What would you say to them?
I would go and speak to quite a number of organisations first and foremost, and do that research. A bit like tweaking to resales. Go and find out. And I think that's the planning stage. I think it's go and speak to other like-minded franchise organisations. Look at the big ones. Look at the top ones. Look at how they operate. Look at some of the, go and look at your McDonald's and look at the systems. Then go and speak to some of the smaller ones, and see what the independent businesses are doing. What are your competitors doing that you're doing that you've got shared in? So it's about then looking at the systems. But then it's interesting. It's a really good question, because I was having this with one of my clients last week who's looking into this at the minute. Is to not overcomplicate it and to start. And with this one in particular, they had a person that loves their organisation and what they do, and is skilled and qualified to do what they do. So we're making a start with them, and they're going to be identifying certain things to do. They're going to do some training, and they're going to start the process. It's not the finished article for them, whether that's the right advice or not, but they've now started. And so I think it's that combination is, don't do your research, go and do your work, look for the right people that you can get on board. And I think I'll give you three, but it's start. Don't wait until you've got the end product, the iPhone message of, I thought, well, we're on iPhone 15. If we'd have waited for iPhone 15, we'd have never had an iPhone. So, start and get going.
Yeah, good advice, Andy. Well, listen, I really appreciate your time today, and we'll keep in touch, and I'll be very interested to follow your progress, and good luck with all of that. It sounds amazing. But for now, yeah, thanks a lot, Andy.
No, thank you. It's always good to reflect, and yeah, really good conversation. Thanks for listening.